normally do, and I think she's been compromised in that sense.
Staying on this topic a little bit longer, Chris, you tweeted today that a carbon tax is not the worst idea in the world. Do you think that would be a better solution than Greta talking about all this other stuff?
So the thing is, like, when we want to transition to a non-carbon environment, right? The thing is, when you try to transition anything, there is a cost. There's a really big cost hurdle that has to be overcome. Like right now, you can't just come out to the world and say, you know what, from now on, you can't buy like gas cars anymore. You know, if the government had done that, Tesla would never have gone off the ground, right? And Tesla would have still probably been, they might have even gone bankrupt, to be honest with you. But probably it's thanks to a lot of the credits that they were able to charge these other fuel companies, like these emission, ICE companies, that they were able to support Tesla in its earlier years to get it to the point where we can actually decarbonize and, transition to more cleaner energy. So my thing is, when it comes to carbon capture, when it came to a carbon tax at first, I was like, that's just a stupid idea. Like who would do that? But I'm seeing that corporations now, especially, are willing to actually pay that little bit extra, so that this way, not to just get a good ESG rating, but then also use that as an offset for some of the stuff that that they need to invest in anyway to get to a better place. So as an example, you have all these celebrities, and this is what really led to the conversation. A lot of these celebrities that come up with this performative bullshit where they're like, we need to save the environment, and then they go into their fucking private jet, they fly around the world. Right.
It was a great infographic of that.
Yeah.
At that climate change forum about how many private jets they were, the amount of fuel that they burned, the amount of pounds.
Now here's the thing. I don't mind that they fly private. I don't. I at this point, look, rich people are gonna rich people. That's just how the world works. Everyone has to accept that. Now the question is,
rich people gonna drip.
Yeah, like, bro, I'm straight with you. If I had the money, I'd fucking fly private too. I've flown commercial. Commercial sucks, but I wouldn't necessarily do it all the time. It's
the value of your time.
Yeah. So I think at this point, I would say implementing something like a carbon tax where, if you want to live the jet setting life, go ahead, live it. But just know that we're going to charge the shit out of you so that this way, some poor family in the middle of Iowa can change out their fuel oil heating for something that's like a heat pump, something that's a lot more efficient.
What's interesting to me, and anyone that has kids knows that there's two ways to get your kids to do something. It's the carrot and the stick. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what's funny to me is corporations in America, especially capitalist corporations, are very much like toddlers, right? And I feel like anyone that has kids knows that what works more than the stick is the carrot. And I think you have to, if we incentivized our companies to do the things that we want, we wouldn't have to legislate them so horribly on the bad side, right? So instead of incentivizing people, right, we think of a carbon tax, right? So you say, I'm going to tax you for using too much carbon. Well, what if the government just had a pool of money that people could have access to if you hit these metrics? So as part of a quarterly earnings, instead of it just being what is your earnings, your PE ratio, how much carbon did you put in the atmosphere, right? Or whatever it was, how much impact did you have negatively on the environment? The lower that number is, if markets saw that as a positive, believe me, if that was a metric that analysts used,
100%,
guarantee you, everyone would figure out a way to suddenly make that happen, because it becomes a knob that you can turn. And you basically, you using the carrot, you play towards the human instinct of greed.
This is why when people say capitalism is the reason for all this, I'm like, no, capitalism is the solution. You create these monetary incentives and renewable energy technology, all this stuff, to decrease the problem, not to blame greed and.
But, okay, I see capitalism is like the game. Okay, it's like when you play. It's like bowling. Okay, you're playing a game of bowling. If you had an infinite number of pins set up and you had no gutters, then everybody would always get a strike. What makes bowling interesting is the rules that you have to play within, right? And that's the same way. What makes these companies, I feel like the guardrails that we put up around the companies should incentivize great gameplay. You know what I mean? And they don't incentivize great gameplay right now. So the legislative, I think, are like the rules of the game, right? It's like it's going off sides in football. You can't jump early. It's basketball. You can't travel with the ball. Otherwise, it makes the game unfair. And that's what I think the role of government should be, is to create rules that are even and fair, but also make intense gameplay and make it a good game. right?
Yeah, but
And
see,
that's,
Greta wants to get rid of the whole game. She wants to get rid of the whole
but I
system.
think that those
That's the
are
part.
that's what makes me feel like there's something else at play. That's what makes me not trust her, because those are things that you say to impressionable 16, 17,
Exactly.
18-year-olds
Exactly.
to get them to throw tomato soup or sit on the freaking highway. If
And it's
somebody
funny,
sat them down,
they're always tweeting from their goddamn iPhones. Like, every one of
right,
them
and
is
some 6-year-old got cobalt out of a mine and built those iPhones for them so that they can tweet. But the thing is, they're too young to recognize the irony in that.
yeah.
And that's partially the adults around them are
And
responsible.
I was in that stage too 8 years ago. I was.
One of the things that I do
I
want
think
to
that,
talk
by the way,
about.
I think we all were.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Chris, you went through
Yeah,
that
all
too.
of us.
No, I went through it too.
Wasn't a piece of that why you joined the army?
Yeah, of course, man. There was actually a movie with Robert Redford that I saw that reminded me of exactly the kind of like thought patterns that they had. Like, did you guys ever see Lions for Lambs? Basically, it's like
No.
you had this like these students who were like these idealists, right? They went to like a college course, and one of the things that they talk about is civics and like how the world really works. And one of them was a Mexican, the other guy was a black guy, and so they ended up they were talking about these idealistic views. And so someone said in their class, like, so it's great that you have all these ideas, but what are you doing about it? And so right in the middle of the class, they actually on the projector they put up their enlistment papers and said, look, we're actually going to be part of the solution. We're going to
Wow.
try to make a positive change in life. So they ended up dying, by the way, at the end of the before the end of the movie.
Oh, damn.
The whole premise of
That
the
went
movie.
sad.
Well, that's because the whole premise of the movie, it was partially anti-war and partially like how the world really works. Like all the idealism in the world telling you like, hey, this is how things should be. Right, Lions for Lambs. That was a really good movie, and
Yeah,
and
Ray,
Robert
Ray
Redford.
just called you out. The spoilers, just like anyone who
Right,
wants to watch it was like, damn,
yeah.
man.
Robert Redford
Because you
did a
can't watch
really
the
good
movie,
job.
you got to watch Finance
Yeah.
Junkies instead.
Tom Cruise was in it, and one of the things that you saw was how the politicians were manipulating the entire narrative and the story, and like how some generals and stuff they would say shit that if you were someone from the outside, they would piss you off. Like some of the stuff that they would say, like politicians would say, oh yeah, we lost 100 guys this month in Afghanistan, but the enemy may have bloodied our nose, but we're winning the fight. And clearly we were not winning the fight. Like 20 years later, what did we gain out of Afghanistan? What did we gain out of Iraq? This wasted lives, wasted treasure for what? The US is in a worse off place for trying to change these people's hearts and minds. And it's just like, look, eventually people will evolve out of their situation, but we don't need to be the world's, like, what's the word, like, I don't know.
The world's
I have
policeman.
a different perspective of the world after everything, and after seeing a lot of the stuff happen in Afghanistan, especially how we exited it, it made me lose faith a little bit in our
That hurt my
ability
feelings,
to.
man. That like hurt my feelings when you saw the people jumping on the plane. I was like, damn.
Yeah, it's just so much sacrifice for what? For what?
All right, let me make 2 announcements. Number 1, StreamYard is in the chat. So if you want to ask a question, please come and join. Last 20 minutes of the pod. So please come on. Camera has to be on and you can chop it up with us for a little bit. Number 2, going back to that conversation of jets, how people name their jets, like when they buy a big,
like a boat
or their boat. If I ever buy a jet, I will name it Netflix, because at that point I'd be done with commercial. Anyways, moving on.
Bro, someone's got to do a supercut of all of your jokes. Like,
bro, that wasn't even mine. That was a Russ lyric. I stole that from Russ.
Okay.
Made a lyric, brother. All right, while we're waiting for people to come back in.
Look, Scott Killian gave you $2 to get off the stage. He's like, please, we'll give you money so Mitt stops making jokes.
Thank you, Scott. All right, while we're waiting for people to come backstage, Carlos, your thoughts on TikTok officially being banned in Montana?
Right. Read a little bit more. It's just government. It's just government phones.
Well, the government passed a bill to ban it, and I think it just has to get passed. But like the point is, it's going to get banned.
But what phones? Is it just
no? Everybody. This is not just government phones. This is everybody.
I mean, in terms of
that's the governor.
Okay, so no one in Montana can access.
Just like India. In India, you can't have TikTok. In Montana, you can't have TikTok.
I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. Why are we allowing Why do we allow other countries to come? Like, I can't go to China right now and buy a house, but they can come here and buy stuff here. Why are we selling out our own stuff? Why don't we have the same feeling of national sovereignty that all these other countries in the world have?
You guys,
And why is
Carlos,
that
you want to hear something really funny that no one, well, not too many people know? When you go to China, even if you're Chinese, you can't buy a house because
I know it's a 99-year lease.
That's right. So
Yeah.
one of the reasons why all these Chinese people end up buying houses in Canada and the US is because you actually have strong property
They want to
rights in
own
the
something.
US.
Yeah, they want to
Yeah.
own something.
In China, it's just a 99-year lease that, you know what, like maybe this generation you're fine, but then the next 2 generations you might not own anything.
But that's my point. We should not be allowing that, and we should not allow another country to be able to have that much access to people's personal data.
I just don't think it's going to
tracking
spread.
data.
Montana's really conservative. I don't think any other states are going to do it.
Yeah, okay, that's what you think.
You think
That's
Los
what you
Angeles? You think California?
That's what they said about legalizing weed, dude.
If
Yeah.
California
It'll take
banned
time,
TikTok, the amount of influencers that would not have a job tomorrow would make the unemployment rate increase to 15%.
They just
No,
dude,
no,
they
no,
just
no,
moved.
no,
That's
no.
what would happen if they banned.
Look,
TikTok.
but that's what they said. That's what they said when Twitter killed Vine. There were so many people that were making their money off Vine, and I know this because I worked
TikTok has a
with.
billion users.
Huh?
Vine. TikTok has half of America on it. That's all I'm saying. I don't think you would get reelected in New York or California if you ban TikTok.
I don't think so.
No.
I think that it depends
That's
on
why AOC endorsed that.
It's all the messaging. Say what? AOC
Yeah.
endorsed AOC endorsed it. Look, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea, and I think that some American company should be working on capturing that crowd.
All right, Chris, last 30 seconds, and we got 3 people in the back. So go ahead.
Okay, I think right now this could be really big for Meta because what's going to happen is a lot of influencers who might be primarily on TikTok are going to say, wait a second, I better diversify my fan base to include things outside of TikTok, whether that means getting on Twitter, getting on Instagram, getting on X, Y, and Z, so that this
Snapchat.
way, Snapchat, so that this way they have a diversified audience, right?
They're
So
not
you're not
platform
relying.
dependent, basically.
That's right,
But
exactly.
The truth of the matter is, most of them do. Like a lot of the content that you see. Here's the flip side of that. A lot of the content that you see on Facebook and on Instagram are people sharing TikTok reels.
The problem is all of those platforms suck at discovery. I've been saying this for years. Everyone knows this. But you know, if TikTok gets banned, maybe they'll get better at discovery. We'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, that's a big question. When you say
That's a big question,
because when you say discovery sucks, you have to define. Well, what's the purpose of the discovery, right? And you have to define like what is the benefit to the end user? What's the benefit to the person sending you that? So there's a lot to unpack there, but it's clearly successful because the purpose of what they're doing is to keep you on the platform. So in that, if that's the metric, if that's the bar, they're incredibly successful.